Haydirin Hashem Oisachayim Hayamin Hashem Hayraim Eima Yamin Hashem Oisachayim Haydirin na 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 ma ya 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 ma ya 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 ha ya 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 Haydirin na 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 ma ya 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 ha ya 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 ma ya 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 Haydirin na Yamin Hashem Hayrai Mehima Yamin Hashem Oisachayim Yamin Hashem Hayrai Mehima Yamin Hashem Oisachayim Haydirin na 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 ma ya 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 ha ya 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 ma ya 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 Haydirin na 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 ma ya 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 ha ya 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 ma ya ya ha Haydirin na 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 Haydirin na 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 ma ya 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 Haydirin na ma ya 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 This is a niggin. It's written by the Baal Tanyas and Baal Menagin. He used to sing this niggin before going into the Baal Tanya for Yechidus. So what better time to sing the niggin before Yat Kislev, to enter the Heichel of the Baal Tanya, the Heichel of Ohr Tzadikim. Haydirin na 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 Haydirin na 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 Haydirin na 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 ma ya ya Haydirin na na ma ya 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 Haydirin na da 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 na na Haydirin na 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 da 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 Haydirin na 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 Haydirin na da 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 na na da da na ma ya 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 ma ya 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 Haydirin na da 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 ya 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 Haydirin na 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 ya ya ma ya 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 Haydirin na 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 ma ya 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 Haydirin na 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 ya ya ma ya 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 Haydirin na 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 ma ya ya Di da da ma ya 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 ya. Hey did da da na na ma ya 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 ya. Hey did na 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 ma ya 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 ya. Hey did na 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 ma ya 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 ya. Hey did na da 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 ma ya 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 ya. Did da 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 ma ya 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 ya. Ha ya ha ya 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 ya. Ma ma ma. Did da ma 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 ma. Ha ya 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 ma ya 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 ya. Hey did na 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 ma ya 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 ya. Hey did na 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 ma ya 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 ya. Did na da 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 na ma ya 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 ya. Did na da 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 na ma ya 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 ya. Ha ya ha ya 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 ya. Did na na da na 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 ma ya 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 ya. Did na 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 ma ya 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 ya. Did na 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 ma ya 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 ya. Did na na ma ya ya ya.
Shalom, everyone. Let me just figure this out a second. There we go. Hi, shalom. Name's Hanani Weisler. Baruch Hashem, we're Zochet. This is the 7th year of doing our annual Yat Kislev event. Baruch Hashem, in past years, no, people not muted. In past years, we've been all over Yerushalayim. We've been zochet to be so close to Har Bayit, so close to the Kodesh Kodashim, doing this from Mamash, so close. And this year, obviously, we're not able to do that, but thank God we're able to have a much bigger hafetza all over the country, all over hopefully America. I'm going to pass over to Rev Judah now to take over the handling of the panel, which I will unmute everyone.
Hi, everyone. Erev Tov. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are, wherever we are. Hanani, I would maybe just change one thing that you said. Birshutcha.
Please.
With your permission. I think that we're close to Kodesh HaKadoshim. I think that we're very close to Holy of Holies. When friends get together like this and aspire to celebrate together with the Balatanya. So the Balatanya's own promise was that anyone who comes and is mesamech with him, then he'll join our simcha, and he's here together with us. And when we enter into the chamber of the Sefer Atanya, which is what really the foundation of this gathering is, this Kislev, that we've reached we're holding now by the completion of Yat Kislev. We're in the Isru Yat Kislev, and it's reached its fullness. We could say that the Balatanya is very much with us. Anyone who enters into the world of the Balatanya and the Sefer Atanya is entering to a yechidus with the Balatanya. So I think that we're very, very much here in a space of Holy of Holies, of Kodesh HaKadoshim. Moshe Daniel, thank you. That was beautiful. It's awesome. It's so good to be together again. There's so many people who just want to we should just unmute everybody and everybody just kind of speak to each other over here. This is really very, very special. I just want to, before anything, introduce a few of the Chevra who are here with us. Our first panelist, Jeff Gdansky. I'm sorry. Our first panelist, Rabbi Yoshua Gerzi, Pilsner Rebbe. I feel like I'm in the Hollywood stores over here. But Yeshua, Shalom Aleichem, thank you for being here again. Thank you for being here again. Davidel Weinberg, in Yerushalayim Yer Kodesh. I mean, he's been in Yerushalayim Yer Kodesh. He's always in Yerushalayim Yer Kodesh. Yerushalayim Yer Kodesh is always in him, is always inside of him. But we're so thankful and so glad that Baruch Hashem we're able to all be here together like this now with revealed good and good health. Welcome back, Davidel. And every living. Amen, amen. And to Rav Mordechai Kaplan, my partner in crime over here. Rav Matcha, it would be nice to see you one of these days. It would be nice to see you. This is the longest we've been apart in 4 decades. Actually, I saw you 2 days ago. Whatever, I'm trying to like get with the Corona theme, you know, distant, whatever. I don't know. I see Mordechai every couple of days. But it's very, very wonderful. And Reb Chananya, Chazdei Hashem, last year we sat Yat Kislev, davening, that Reb David and Reb Chananya should be together. We should sit together and thank God. Baruch Rofei Cholim, Chazdei Hashem, Ein Ra Yord Malamala. It's so good. We should just continue to see revealed good and good health. I don't know if Zuki's around. Zuki, where's the soup? Where's the soup? That's what we want to know. The Jews want to know, where is the soup? Anyways, thank you all for being here, for joining us together for this Sichas Chaverim here in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. I want to just want to ask, I want to open things up here a little bit. I'm going to turn first to Reb Davidel. Last year, everybody, we heard Rav Mordechai last year. We heard Rav Yeshua last year. And we're going to turn to Rav Davidel this year. I'm going to ask Rav Davidel, what are we doing here? What on earth are we doing? How did we get here? We all, I mean, not to be presumptuous, but I'm looking through the screens here, the myriads, the tens of thousands of Jewish souls who have gathered here this evening. And I'm looking, I don't recognize most of you guys and most of you young men and women from my years in Tomchei Tmimim in Crown Heights, learning in Lubavitch. I don't recognize you from Chaslavich when we were under the influence of the great Mashpim, Reb Mendel Futterfass, and Rabbi Jacobson, Alayhi Shalom. I don't recognize most of you from those days of growing up in the Lubavitch system. I'd like to just understand here how we got here. Yat Kislev, how did we end up over here? Davidel.
First of all, to the Baal Menagin, you restored my soul with those Nagunim. Absolutely beautiful. Second of all, what a privilege it is to be back here, as Rav Judah said, to be able to share Torah together, to study together, to verbring together, especially with 3 of my great teachers, and Reb Chananya, another one of my great teachers, for organizing. So, you know, it's become my custom at this Verbringen to say the same story every single time, and to say it with Ischadshus every single time, because each time I pinch myself more and more trying to answer this question that Rav Judah is asking, which is, you know, for those who didn't catch it, you know, none of us grew up, you know, as my grandmother, Shalom Mima Shendel, used to say, David, you were such a nice boy in high school. What happened? Why did you have to grow a beard and payas and all this stuff, you know? My grandmother wanted to know, well, where did this all come from? And I'm asking myself the same question. But what I can say, which is what I say, you know, every year to myself and to anyone who will listen on this holy day and on these holy days, the Yom HaRichta of Rosh Hashanah, of these 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, Yud Tes and Chaf, the Yom HaRichta of Rosh Hashanah, what I always say is the Maisa from the Heilig Originer, Zechusi Again Aleinu. And I think in a lot of ways that's what we're doing, and that's how I'm able to sit here together with everybody and to and to feel like we're doing something that's true to us. The mindset with the Rishner is that the Rishner used to say that when there was a gzeira min hashamayim, when there was a decree against the Jewish people, whenever there was a decree against the Jewish people during the times of the Baal Shem Tov, the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh would go to a particular place in the forest, or he knew there was a particular place, and he would light a candle with certain kavanos, and he would say a tefillah with certain kavanos, and the gzeira would be knocked away. The gzeira would be undone. And the Maggid of Mezrich, his Talmud, came afterwards, and the Maggid of Mezrich said, you know, my Rebbe used to come to this place in the forest, such and such a place, that I have him a sower where the place is. And he used to light a candle, and he would say a tefillah, but I don't know the special kavanos. I don't know the special kavanos. I could light the candle, I could say the words, but I don't know the kavanos. And the Rishner said that Rav Moshe Leib Sassover used to come to that same place, and he would say, there was a special place, they would travel to that place in the forest, and they would light a candle. And he said, you know, the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid, they knew the tefillah, but I don't even know the tefillah anymore. I don't even know the tefillah anymore. And the Rishner used to say, Rabbanu Shalom, I don't know the tefillah, I don't know the kavanos, I don't know anything. I don't even know where the place is in the forest. But I could continue to tell the story of what the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid and the Moshe Leib Sassover were doing. And for me, my first entry point, I can't speak for everybody, but I could speak for myself, my first entry point into this beautiful, beautiful world of the Torah of the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh, and the Arizal, and Rashbi, and this whole world of the Ohr Tzadikim, which seems to be the theme of the panel this evening, of this Farbrengen, of this gathering. What I could say is that from the time that I first entered into or attempted to step over the threshold of the Beis Medrash of the Baal Shem Tov when I was probably around 13 years old. I had a counselor in camp. I've said this story a number of times. I had a counselor in camp who introduced me to the music of Rabbi Yosef Karduner. And really, before I even met the Baal Shem Tov, I met Rabbi Nachman through the Nigunim of Rabbi Yosef Karduner. And from the time that I first heard those Nigunim, from the time that I heard that Nigin of the Baal Shem Tov, V'Talmidav, and his Talmidim, my whole life I've been trying to figure out how to enter more deeply and to how to say this story and to pass this story on to my children. And so for me, I'm always trying to figure out what exactly is my role, is our role. On the one hand, you know, I have the luxury of sitting here, just one bookshelf over. You know, you can't really see it, but one bookshelf over, I have the luxury of having the Heilige Satmar Rebbe and the Heilige Rav Kook on my bookshelf right next to each other, which is something that I could only have because of the fact that I grew up the way that I grew up, and to be able to draw from top down and bottom up from all the different tzaddikim, and to be able to pull from all of the goodness of all, which is what I think the Baal Shem Tov was trying to teach us, to see with an ayin tova and to see the good and the sweetness in every single derech and avodas Hashem, and that's something that I think we can do uniquely. And I think coming together in this Farbrengen, this virtual Farbrengen, is just another way of being able to utilize something that I can't even imagine. In my heart of hearts, I know that the Baal Shem Tov was dafka imagining exactly this, that there would be Yidden sitting all over the world, that were getting together using all these strange ways of trying to connect. And that dafka, we would be the generation and we would be the people from our upbringing dafka and from our background, you know, from those people. And everybody knows, we don't have to, you know, everybody who grew up with whatever name they started with, you know, and slowly morphed into these different personas of hashpa or not, or whatever it is, you know, dafka to be able to do it kechaverim, to do it as friends, and to have people who I look up to and insist that they're my rebbeim, but who always insist they're my friends. And the same thing for people who insist that I'm their rebbe, and I insist that this is the avoda of our generation, and something which we uniquely have and can bring to this Yat Kislev and to all Yat Kislevs in the future, to show that the derech of the Baal Shem Tov and the derech of the tzaddikim is open to everybody and anybody. Those are some preliminary thoughts.
Thanks, Reb Davidel. I would like to ask Rabbi Yeshua. I think that's Rabbi Gerzi. Rabbi Gerzi, for those who haven't had the privilege yet to meet Rabbi Gerzi and to daven with him, Rabbi Gerzi is is at the center of a very inspired and beautiful community in Ramat Beit Shemesh, Beis David of Pilsner, Oiv Shalom, Rodev Shalom, a kihila that lives with the principles of the Torah Baal Shem Tov, an open and inclusive Beis Medrash that you could feel Ahavas Yisrael, and you could feel the light of the Baal Shem Tov iterated in every single element of the shul's activities. So I'd like to ask Rabbi Gerzi, so what comes next? Rabbi David talked about the entry point. So many of us have had the opportunity in the schus to be introduced to the world of the Baal Shem Tov and his Talmidim. Today's Yat Kislev. Today's a day about drawing closer and taking on some new dimension in Limud HaChasidus, and the study of Chasidus, and Darkei HaChasidus, the pathways of Chasidus. Could you perhaps, with your experience and in your leadership role or personally, share a little bit about what does this mean practically? What does this mean practically? Beyond learning the Sfarim, and beyond the Nigunim, beyond having the ability to have access to these ideas, what could it mean in practical terms on a day-to-day basis? Rabbi Gerzi, Chavod.
Shalom ubracha to everybody. And I just want to, I mean, this is part of it. This is part of it. And it's just, we have eyes, we have ears. If I could hug you, I'd grab every single one of you and give you hugs and kisses. I think just, first of all, just recognize everybody. I'm just scrolling through. I'm just looking at all the beautiful faces. And just like the chapshat that we're here. I saw a few minutes ago. I'm seeing faces I hadn't seen for a long time. And to be honest, it's emotional. You know, it's very emotional just to be with people, to see people. Chasdei Hashem. And as Reb Davdel said, my teacher, my chaver, and everybody else here, my teacher, my chaver. What comes to mind, this is what comes to mind. And I think this is something that I was taught. I was very zeicher to be amongst a number of tzadikim. And something I saw with them that they took very, very seriously, and something that they gave to me, they gifted to me. After everything said, after everything done, let's rule out a couple of things. Being around certain tzadikim, it wasn't about olam haba, as in we're going to die and get brownie points in a world to come. It wasn't about language of, you know, Yiddish and Kabbalah and Chassidus. It wasn't about any of that. What I saw and what I received is that the tzaddikim that I learned by, they were fully engaged in living. Engaged in living. And if there's anything that I can share, if there's anything that I can say, I mean this from the bottom of my heart. I scream this out in my silence, that if each and every one of us could encourage, can share, can really live fully engaged and spread that message to be fully engaged, to be focused, to be really animated, in love with life, in love with everything that we do. It's not just about the Baal Shem Tov, it's really Yiddishkeit. You know, it's really Yiddishkeit. What's wanted from us, what's wanted for us from the Beira Olam. And that is mamash, to desire, to really want, to really yearn, and to live fully engaged. And I was speaking to somebody yesterday. I had this conversation with somebody yesterday who they'd been learning in a very well-known Tzaddik Beis HaMedrash. And they've now had to transition from learning in the Beis HaMedrash, they've had to go to work. And they're very broken because they wanted all their life to sit in learning. And now they're going out to work. And I said to them something that I heard from one of my teachers, the Kretschner Rebbe, and he said something, very interesting. He said like this, that we are sometimes given a message that, I have to eat so I've got strength to daven. I have to sleep, so I've got strength to learn. I have to be Isaac in Devekus, so I've got strength for everything else to do with Yiddishkeit. And the Kretschenover said that, why do I eat? It's not for anything else apart from eating. Why do I sleep? It's not for anything else apart from sleeping. It's to be fully present and fully engaged with everything that we do in the most deepest, passionate way, to be in love with life, to be in love with the walls, to be in love with the computer, to be in love with me, to be in love with you. And they're the words that come to mind now from my heart, and that's what I could share. That's what I could share right now.
Thank you very, very much, Rabbi Gurzi. I'm going to, Rav Mordechai, I want to move this. I want to move this into the world of Das here. On the flyer, it says here that we're talking about living with the light of the tzaddikim. Rav Davidel and Rabbi Gurzi both mentioned this notion of attachment to, or learning with, or living with the tzaddik. I'd like to pivot in that direction here. What does that mean practically? What does that mean practically to live with the Ohr? What is this Ohr Tzaddik that we're speaking about here?
Okay. Let's start with the Baal HaTanya. It's his day. So we'll start with Shayichut Ve'emunah. I think the Baal HaTanya explains what a tzaddik is, and obviously we're doing it bekitzer. But he says that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, he created with the Midas Hadin. And usually we think that Midas Hadin means that, judgment and everything, we get punished for everything. So that's one understanding of it. But the understanding that I think the Baal HaTanya is working with, that Midas Hadin means that there was too much physicality in the world. HaKadosh Baruch Hu hid himself in the world too much, meaning HaKadosh Baruch Hu was playing like on a mixing board, kiviyachol. On one hand, he has to put godliness in the world. On the other hand, he has to hide himself because too much God, the physical doesn't exist. And he's playing with this mixing board of godliness versus God hiding and letting the world be. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu saw that he whatever this means, kiviyachol, that the world was a little bit more leaning towards not seeing God in the world. So what does HaKadosh Baruch Hu do? So you'd think that he would pump up a little bit of the chesed, of God's straight light. Hashem didn't do that. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's light was absent in the world. HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought the midah of rachamim in the world. What's the midah of rachamim? Tahainu iskalus elokus. HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals himself not through putting more chesed in the world, not putting himself in the world, because then we can't exist. Rather, how does he mizgala elokus? Through rachamim. Al yedei tzadikim va'osos u'mosim shebetorah. Through the tzadikim and the osos and the mosim of the Torah. If you want to know Hashem in this world, so you don't meditate for 24 hours and try to understand Hashem. You open up a Gemara, you open up a Chumash, you open up a Shulchan Aruch. That's Hashem calling us to us. Kishem Hashem akra, havagodel elokeinu. Call Hashem's name, look in the Torah. And there's another thing, and that's a tzaddikim. The tzaddikim, if you want to know God in this world, HaKadosh Baruch Hu put in tzaddikim to start. This is who I am, Elokei Avram, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov. Like we start Shemona Esrei. It's not such a big chiddush that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is seen through the Avos. The Avos is one form, the first form of tzaddikim. And to take it one step further, that the Kuti Maran Samach Zayin, which was really a hesped, it was a hidden hesped for Levitz Rebeditchev. Rabbi Nachman says, Bereshis is Osios Rosh Bayis, the head of the house. Bechinas habal habayis shel ha'olam. The bal habayis shel ha'olam. Ooh, that's God, right? Sorry, guys. Hainu tzaddik emes. Who's the bal habayis of the world? The tzaddik emes. I couldn't say that myself. But Rabbi Nachman says it. Samach Zayin Tinyana. Shua yofi va'pe'er shel ha'olam. That is the yofi and the pe'er of the shel ha'olam. This is the Rosh Habayis. The function of the tzaddik is on many levels, and we'll do this very bekitzer. Number one, how does God work? How do I keep halacha? So ask the Talmud Chacham, how do I keep halacha? How do I keep Hilchot Shabbos? How do I daven? That's on one level. That's the most basic level that everybody shares. You don't need Hasidus for that. Second level is Ashkafa. How do I go through life? Direct me through the life in the Talmud Chacham, knowing all of the Chacham of Hashem. He's going to be able to guide you in life in the Ashkafa and the derech of your life. He's going to be able to guide you in life. I don't think that's also a Chiddush for Hasidus. I think everybody understands this concept of go to a Talmud Chacham. He sees a greater picture, as Mesilas Yesharim talks about, that the Talmud Chacham sees above the maze, and he can help us go through the maze. Level number 3 is the Rav Loshia, that the tzaddik is a Rav Loshia. You go to Rav Noam Elimelech of Lezhensk, how many stories of Rav Loshia, that the tzaddik, Hashem is gozer, and and the tzaddik is mekayim, that the tzaddik can break the gzeir of Hashem even. That's the next level of Rav Loshia. And the next level of the tzaddik, which I think Rabbi Nachman is talking about, and of course the Baal HaTanya is talking about, is a Rosh Bias. Everybody needs a Rosh Bias. Everybody needs, just like in sports. Why are people connecting so much to sports? Because it's connecting to something bigger than yourself. When you're into, I don't think I could use the Giants as the Jets for the examples. I suppose they're doing really bad, although one guy in my shir just said tonight that the Jets are beating the Raiders. But the than yourself. Bias. You have direction in your home. Everybody in the home is following this. This is it from the minhagim. Like a Breslover's house. No one's going to touch an onion. No way. Meaning, of course, that's not halacha, shulchan aruch, but it's the nemusim of the tzaddik that take over the bias and the rosh bias, and there's a partnership with you and the tzaddik, and you're holding hands in hands to the tzaddik. It's not like you're just asking eitzah and you're not getting halacha. Those are the levels that we mentioned. But the rosh bias is the person that you live your whole life by. Everything. How do I walk? Well, what does the tzaddik say about walking? As Rav Gerzi was talking about, how do you sleep? What does the tzaddik say about sleeping? Everything that the tzaddik says. That's the Indian of the rosh bias. And to finish it off, whenever on the Bederach trips we get to Uman, it's always a little of a letdown because, Uman's Uman. It's not Medjugorje, it's not Breslov, it's not Berdichev, it's not, for sure not Annapolis if we get there. I say the first thing when we get to Uman, throw all of the petiks you had for davening for this person, that person, Adkan, not an Uman. That was for Levi Yitzchak, that was the Baal Shem Tov, Rabbi Nosson, put the petiks away. Now we have to ask the tzaddik, what do you want from us? Not what do we want from you. We don't ask Rav Loshia. He is a Rav Loshia, but that's not the ikar. The ikar is the partnership of saying, Rabbi Nachman, you're the Rosh Bais. What do you need from us? How can I bring a message into the world? And I think that Yat Kislev, just to bring it back to the first question, I went to a drive-in with my kids last night in Beit Shemesh, and it was unbelievable. You felt like you were connecting to a much larger picture. And I'm not a big Chabadsker. It was like literally filled with, Mendes and Schneers and everything. And you were connecting to this unbelievable picture. And you felt the Rosh Bias is the Rebbe. Like literally the Rosh, you walk into the Lubavitcher Rebbe's house, the first thing you see that massive picture. So that's a very chitzoni thing, but you get the sense, this is the Rosh Bias. He's calling the shots here. On the cake that we got, it said a quote from the Baal HaTanya. There was a clear Rosh Bias. There's a partnership between you and the tzaddik. And those are the different levels that the tzaddikim, and going back to the Baal HaTanya to finish, that in order to know the ways of Hashem, without Torah, we're lost. Without tzaddikim, we're lost. And the tzaddik shows the ways of Hashem to the point that Rabbi Nachman calls the balabait, because there's something above the balabait. That's a Kadosh Baruch Hu. But there's a balabait who's going to tell you what to do, what not to do, how to sleep, how to eat. And on those levels, the tzaddikim can come into our lives.
Reb Zelik Epstein, who probably hasn't been mentioned in a Yat Kislev Fabrengen with the Breslover background, is to say that the fulfillment of La'avda or L'Shamra, that Hashem putting us in the world to cultivate the world, to be His partners in creation, means that we have to become balabatim, that we have to be superintendents, so to speak. I just want to. We all say it every day in davening. We profess our emunah, our faith in God, but we also profess our faith in tzaddikim. Vayaminu ba'adonai, u'v'Moshe avdo. We believe in God and in Moses, his servant, and Moshe Rabbeinu, his servant. Reb Davidel, Bekitzer, I'd like to hear from Reb David and from Reb Yeshua. What does this mean practically? To follow the Eitzah, fine. To have the tzaddik in my life, I get it. I'm into it. What can I do in a tangible sense? What on a day-to-day level? I wake up in the morning. Where's the tzaddik in my life? What role does he play? Reb David.
Just unmuting here.
Amen.
Yeah, unmuting. So what could we do? What can we do? Honestly, person has to speak from where their heart is. You know, what can we do? If the Indian of the tzaddik, is compared to this Indian of tzaddik yesod olam, the tzaddik is the yesod. And there's this Indian of a tzaddik being like a zachar, like the husband in the husband-wife relationship on a certain level. Then in the same way that the Gemara in Kiddushin says that the husband has to go seek out his wife, and that it's the job of the husband to go find that which is lost. On a certain level, there's so many things that we can do practically. You know, what person who is in the dating market, whether they're the husband or the wife in potential, isn't trying to put on their best, and to be someone who's attractive to the other, and to make ourselves worthy of being connected to holy people. But on a certain level, I can speak from my own life. My own life, the greatest tzaddikim that I've been connected to have found me, and I mean that from the very first thing that I said before. Now, I'll speak in a moment about what you can do about that, because that's, how do you do that? You say, okay, that's very nice for you, but that hasn't happened to me yet, but I have to start from the place of emes, which is that the greatest tzaddikim that I've been connected to, including what I said from the very beginning, that when I was 13 years old, Rabbi Nachman somehow came through, through this counselor of mine in camp, and my stumbling across, Rav Weinberger tapes in my Shana Aleph in the library, where I was going to Yeshiva and Reishit Yerushalayim, which who knows if Rav Judah stashed them there knowing that I would be in there. I don't know, who knows. To all the other, to my Rav growing up, Rav Avram Yitzchak Levine. These are the people who just at the right moment, just when you need them, are able to come through and to pass something remarkable onto you. I can remember, my wife is here over on the side, and she can testify that when I was in the middle, a year and a half ago, whatever, we were going through what we were going through medically. There was one particular day I was on my way to, my son had right around this time, my son had a Hanukkah play. He's 5 years old. He had some sort of Hanukkah play, or a Pesach. I don't remember if maybe it was Pesach, maybe it wasn't around this time. My wife will remember better, but we were on our way to this play that they were having in the Chabad where he was going to school. And I wasn't going to be able to go in because, my immune system was totally knocked out, and it was to go into a gan where they're little kids. It just wasn't going to happen, And in that moment, when I needed it mamish the most, my Rebbe growing up, my Rav from my shul growing up, Rav Avram Yitzchak Levine, called and started talking, and we were sitting there, my wife was driving, I was sitting in the passenger seat. And I just started, crying and crying and crying. And everything he was saying was about how good I am and how good I am and how good I am. And just breathed new life into me. And I've had a number of occasions where I've had in the right moment at the right time where the tzaddik is the one who comes. We say, Ala tzadikim, ala chasidim. We say to Hashem in davening, we say, Ala tzadikim, ala chasidim. And we ask Hashem, we say, V'sein sachar tov l'chol abotchem b'shimcha be'emes. V'sein chelkeinu imahem. There are a lot of times in our lives, and maybe this is one thing that we can do, and one thing that we can do to open ourselves up. V'sein chelkeinu v'sim chelkeinu imahem. To place our portion with them. There are a lot of times where our portion, whatever our portion is, whatever our portion might be, or perhaps could be, is something that we need to temporarily place with the tzaddik. The Sfarim are filled with this idea that when a person, we think about Shabbos, just for one more minute, when we think about Shabbos, Shabbos is called, the bracha of Shabbos is Mikola Hayamim. Shabbos is Yamim. And the tzaddik is called Shabbos. The idea of Shabbos is not just that it is more holy than all the other days, but it's blessed by way of all the other days. It's blessed by way of all the other days. In other words, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, because they weren't worthy of being Shabbos themselves, they gave over their Kedusha to Shabbos. It's the Yom Ze Mechubad Mikol Yomim. The other days were given over. And there are a lot of times in life where, because we're not tzaddikim always, like my Rebbe's grandfather, Rav Aryeh Levine, said when he was asked one time by a child, so are you one of the Lamed Vav tzaddikim? You seem like it. And Rav Aryeh said, sometimes, but sometimes we're not. And so in those moments, v'sim chalkeinu imahem, we give over that portion of the tzaddik that we all have on our Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday kind of days, and we give it over to the tzaddik, and the tzaddik holds it. And the tzaddik, like Yaakov Avinu, is shomer sadavar. And he's Yoshev u'metzapa Masai, he's going to be able to give it back to us, because the tzaddik and all the tzaddikim in my life, and that's all I could speak from, is my experience. The greatest tzaddikim in my life have been the ones who have been able to hold on to that nekudas tzaddik shabi, and to hold on to it when it was difficult for me to play that role, and then gave it back exactly in the moment when I needed it. And that's, in my life, in my short tenure as a person who dares to get paid as an educator, that's the model that I've been trying to follow with my own Talmidim, who I love with all of my heart and all of my soul, that in those moments when they need it, to be the person who v'sim chalkeinu imahem, that they can give their portion over to me and I can hold on to it and remind them in dafka in that moment when they need it the most. And so the thing that we can do, maybe practically, is to do that, is to be willing, ready, and able to be in a relationship with somebody who we know, like the Ohr Tzadikim said so beautifully. It's one of the advantages of being here. I can pull it off the shelf, but I won't. The Ohr Tzadikim says so beautifully that in the Gemara asks, Moshe Rabbeinu says, Yira Shamayim, Ma Hashem Shol Mimcha, what does Hashem ask you? Just Yira Shamayim, nothing. So, and the Gemara asks, is Yira Milsa Zutrasehi? Is Yira such a small thing? And the Ohr Tzadikim so beautifully says, yes, in Eitzel Moshe Milsa Zutrasehi. When you're, by Moshe Rabbeinu, it was a small thing. Moshe Rabbeinu was easy to have Yira Shamayim. And he says, no, so Moshe Rabbeinu was easy, but he was asking us to have Yira Shamayim. So he says, Eitzel Moshe Yira Shamayim was a Milsa Zutrasehi. When you're standing next to Moshe Rabbeinu, when you're near your tzaddik, when you're with your tzaddikim, when you're with your tzaddikim, v'amich kulam tzaddikim, and those tzaddikim were mamish the Tanya's definition of tzaddik. Not just v'amich kulam tzaddikim, but the Tanya's definition of tzaddik. Not just the tzaddik where it's a kinoi, but the real tzaddikim are those who are able to help us to have an easier time being Yira Shamayim, an easier time seeing how good we are and seeing how sweet we are.
Thank you, Davidel. Shakayach. Thank you. Rabbi Yeshua, what does it mean to live with the Ohr Tzadikim?
Okay. So I think if we can, use the term practically speaking, there's a lot of good, righteous people out there. And I know for me, from a very young age, I had ingrained in me, go spend time with people, go sit with people, speak to people. And there's something that happens, we mentioned before about davening Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov. So we know the Zohar says Chesed, Din, and Rachamim, and the Avos of the Tzadikim, and it goes back to Adam Arishon. And if we take Chesed, Din, and Rachamim, it's Rosh Hashanah's Cheder, which is room, and if you go out there and you go out there and you practice a little bit of vulnerability, there's amazing people out there. Practically speaking, it's going to meet people, sitting with people, learning from people. And there's always those few rabbonim, teachers, educators, mentors, that they could be your tzaddik, and they give you room, they give you cheder, they give you room to exist. And I really think in this day and age, it's so important, you know, the world of business, the world of sports, every discipline, martial arts, music, every discipline, you have a mentor. Why not have a mentor in Ruchnius, in spirituality? Why not go seek out the different tzaddikim? They're there, the tzaddikim in America, Eretz Israel, all over. Practically speaking, it's going to be machazek by certain people who you build a relationship with and you feel a closeness to. And then every single day of your life, you know, when I come back from visiting a tzaddik, my wife usually says to me, okay, you're a little bit more well-behaved. I'm a little bit of a troublemaker. She says, I could see you were by somebody a little bit more well-behaved. So practically speaking, go out, meet people.
Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Nachman says that the point of the tzaddik, that the essence of the tzaddik is not just revealed when one comes in contact with a great person, with a lofty person, with the Rosh Bayis. Not all of us have that access. Not all of us have that entry point, and not all of us necessarily are able to recognize those messengers that Reb David describes so beautifully. So Rabbi Nachman says that every time that we interact with a friend and have an honest moment, we reveal that point of yichud. When we interact with our partner or with a significant other, or we conduct business in a way which is heartful, which is open and aware of Hashem's presence, and we know that there's something bigger, that there's a meta-narrative taking place, like Rav Mordechai described, what we can't necessarily put our finger on, perhaps is called the Ohr Tzadikim, that confidence, that attachment to something transcendent, those wind in our sails, that Shlomo HaMelech, who preceded the Baal Shem Tov, Shlomo HaMelech writes that Ohr Tzadikim, the light of the Tzadikim, is Yismach. Ohr Tzadikim Yismach. The light of the Tzadikim makes one joyful. I think they say in the name of Hillel Paritcher that if Shlomo Melech would have lived after the Baal Shem Tov, instead of using the imagery of a husband and wife, two lovers, to describe the Holy of Holies of Shir HaShirim, he would describe the relationship between a chassid and their Rebbe. Because that same algorithm, internal algorithm of giving and receiving, of sharing and of reaching a place of oneness is able to take place in every relationship. Like we're thankful to Moshe Daniel for being here to add a little bit of direction in the Nigunim. While Moshe Daniel is leading us in a little bit of a Seder Nigunim, if anybody would like to pose any questions to anyone on the panel or to everyone together, you could message me privately in the chat, and Mirz Hashem will go from there.
Mordechai, we're just doing it. We're going for it. Hay pada v'shadai nafshi mikrav li ki rabbi haya yulimani hayesh makel hay veyane hay veyishem kedem sena hayesh makel hay veyane hay veyishem kedem hay sebebela Haya Sherein Khalif Islamai Haya Sherein Khalif Islamai Haya Sherein Khalif Islamai Vela Yaru Elohim Hayshalach Hayada Haybishlayma Haychile Haychile Brisai Haychach Kumach Mais Bevuchram Zibamai Hayrakud Vara Mishabana Hayviema Stay Hayha Shleicha Hashem Yehavecha Ve'oleo Yechal Kevelecha La Baba Yitin Le'aylam Ma'ilad Tzadik Ma'ilad Tzadik Viata Elohim Ta'iri Dein Liveshachas Anshem Damim Mirma Lama Yechetzu Elo Yechzu Hashem like it. Maladeinu Yilohei Elabodech Kol Malecha Beyadacha Amenehem V'yinoyim Hashem like it. Umahaseydeinu Kagna Aleinu Umahaseydeinu Kagna Umahaseydeinu Kagna Aleinu Umahaseydeinu Kagna. Oh, hey, Shuba, Shuba, Lad Hashem Bakos, Aydei Nachem, Lad Bodevecha, Zabeinu Baba, Ikecha Sadecha, Ramina, Nismecha, Chol Yameinu. Hey, Shuba, Shuba, Hashem Bakos, Aydei Nachem, Lad Bodevecha, Zabeinu Baba, Ikecha Sadecha, Ramina, Nismecha, Chol Yameinu. Uneranina, yoyim lismecha, chol yameinu. Uneranina, yoyim lismecha, chol yameinu. Oh, Yelohei elabodecha v'alecha, hey yenosh ha'amineyeh, hey yenoyam Hashem, yeinu ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-leinu. Hey, elabodecha v'alecha, beyadacha v'abinehem, v'yinoyam Hashem, heinu ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-leinu. Mahaseydeinu kagna v'aleinu, mahaseydeinu kagneinu. Mahaseydeinu kagneinu.
It's so good to see so many friends. It's so good to see so many familiar faces. It's also so good to see so many new faces. This is really great. I'm very grateful that everybody has joined us, and for all the questions that came in. There's one that caught my attention over here. I think that the question is, I'll just give you the word for word is, what happens when your family's not on board? I think that the premise of the question, is already reveals something here, which is disjointed. But I'm gonna pass it to Rav Mordechai to share a little bit. What happens, Rav Mo, when a person is inspired and drawn to a certain pathway in Avodas Hashem? Let's call it, I don't know, let's just pick one randomly. Let's call it, I don't know, Chasidus. And you know, it's great, and it's hunky dory, it's wonderful. And he or she is drawing from where they're drawing from, learning, davening in a certain way, cultivating a certain belief system, and drawing close in a certain way, all pumped up and excited. And let's say that their co-pilot is not necessarily drawing from that place or connecting in the same way, and feels like I don't know, like a little bit of somewhat blindsided by this. Anything that you could share here? We're going to ask everybody to try to keep it to 2 minutes, please. We'll start with Rav Mo.
Okay. Obviously, there's a very personal question, and every person has to ask and get from their mentor, because every situation is different. Just a few klalim. First of all, the idea of the tzaddik is the personality. We'll say the cult of personality has become a very dangerous type of an idea in Judaism, because all the people that failed us, Shabtai Tzvi, and throughout the ages, rabbis that just didn't come through. They looked good, everything looked good, and then you find out some horrible story about them, and lives were shattered, mamish. So there's a fear of giving into the personality. That's tough, but afal pichein, that's one of the nisyonos, to believe in the tzaddik, that it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to put your chips down on a person, especially a living person. A dead person for 200 years is a little bit easier. They're finished. And no headlines that are going to go out, for a person that's dead for 200 years. But on a more positive note, so that's what we're working kind of neged, against, that fear that the Jewish people picked up over the ages of the personality failing them. But on a more practical level, I think that tzaddikim are coming so close to us. And anybody went to Medjugorje, I mean, tell me that the Baal Shem Tov didn't come with open arms and say, welcome, welcome, welcome to Medjugorje. I'm your host, and I'm your Baal Bayit, and I'm going to take care of you. Tell me anybody who went to Medjugorje who didn't get that message from the Baal Shem Tov. I met somebody who felt like his son was just not into anything. And he told me, he looked at a picture of his son in Medjugorje. They went before, so cool, I think before Judah was going already, a long time ago. And he said he looked at his face, the son's face, and he just wasn't there. What? And I felt bad to tell him this. I didn't tell him this, but like, now if you were someone to Medjugorje, he would have loved the food. He would have loved the hachnasas orchim and the hot mikvah and just everything around it is so good. And even Meron, it became like, I have a cousin who was in from Lakewood, and he was telling my kids that when you come to Lakewood, I'll take you to Great Adventure. And one of my kids, and my kids are not big tzaddikim, they're very special kids, but they're normal, cranky kids that, one of my kids told him, he said, why go to Great Adventure? We have Meron here. And Baruch Hashem, over the ages, and again, there's a lot of fighting in Meron and this, and it's too packed, and this kid doesn't like it. That's true. But you start living with these people and bring them into the house where it's in their Talmud maybe. Again, there's so many eitzes. Now's not the time to really go through all the eitzes, but make the tzaddikim real, because they're opening up their arms right now. In our generation, it's not stam that we have a Yat Kislev thing. And, the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe started the idea of Yat Kislev, but it's really taking now, because the tzaddikim are starting to say, we're here, we're real, and we're going to make your life great. Life is great with tzaddikim. And we just have to show that other half a little bit, in obviously in a non-invasive way, that life is great with the tzaddikim. As Rav Gerzi said that when, I'll finish off with this, one of the biggest titans about Uman Rosh Hashanah is like, how do you leave your kids and how do you leave your wife and your kids don't know the Rosh Hashanah? I'm sorry, that I don't buy that for a second. My kids, because the Abba goes to Rosh Hashanah to Uman, they're connected to the tzaddik. And they're sad that this year that Abba didn't go to Rosh Hashanah. And it crushed them, because they know that the Abba says no greater chinuch for your children to say, bye-bye, I'm going to Rabbi Nachman for a few days to daven for you and to daven for the world and connect to the tzaddikim. And that's the greatest chinuch. And you could bring them along. These days, you could bring them along. Not to one Rosh Hashanah maybe, that'll be in a few years, but you could bring them along to these places. And the tzaddikim, the books, the little children's books, started out as a culture in the house. Tzaddikim could be a culture, and it's there for us. And if anybody wants a private conversation on a PM or whatever it is, I'm happy, on practical advice.
You can hit the Rav Mo's page on OnlyFans if you'd like to get the real content, and he'll share his opinion more directly and openly and won't hedge his bets. I'm trying to pay attention and watch my dad's reaction here at the same time. It's a little bit distracting. Rabbi Gerzi, please, Rabbi Yeshua.
So this has had to be dealt with many, many, many times. And maybe I can just add a little bit. And that is that the Avodas Hashem in general, I believe, needs to be inclusive of the family. It's so easy that a person can go off and grow by themselves. And I think a question that we all need to ask is, as I'm growing myself, did I think about the person next to me? Did I think about the person behind me? And I do believe, I've had to deal with this hundreds of times. And I think that number one, if there are issues, the communication is really important. To sit opposite somebody who doesn't agree with you, talk about it. What is it in me that I'm feeling that this is real for me? In relationships, there's many times that I may see something differently than my wife. However, there is an akudah, you can carry it in your heart. If it's difficult on the outside and there's a maturity that needs to occur, I don't know if it's rambling what I'm saying, but you can carry it in your heart. Baruch Hashem, my wife and I are on the same pages with this. I would say early on, it was a bit difficult for her. She didn't grow up the way I grew up with Tzadikim and the Lubavitcher Rebbes, and Rebbe Nachman's. She didn't have that. So it was a little bit odd for her, but the fact is, wherever I go, I carry them in my heart. They're with me. They're with me right now. Mamash, they're with me right now. And that's something which I think is really important to recognize. And as well, the fact part of the Aveda of the Tzadikim is not to leave someone behind, especially by Rebbe Nachman. Don't leave anyone behind. So anyway, that's what Seder.
Amen. Amen. Reb Davidel.
Just briefly, 3 brief points. I'll try to keep it short. The first thing that I would share is, Benji will be proud of me for doing this. I just finished writing a sefer not that long ago. Everyone should go out and buy Benji's book and my book and David Bashevkin's book and all the books. Svarim are important, but more importantly than that, one of the things that one of the great editors who spent a lot of time, a really wonderful editor of the manuscript of the sefer that I wrote, in many places really strengthened a lot of my writing, because over and over again I was instructed to show and not tell. When you're trying to present something in writing, oftentimes you're tempted to say, this is an awesome Torah, or this is an amazing story, or to kind of, preface it by couching it in how amazing or how great or how much it's influenced you. And it's much easier to just not say that and just to show instead of telling. And if you show people in your life, your children and your significant others, whether it's husbands for wives or wives for husbands, or children for parents or parents for children, but if instead of trying to tell them about how awesome it is, we just show them, that's number one. I think that's a really important thing. Number two, which I think has been somewhat mentioned already, is just, as Rav Gerzi said a moment ago, it wasn't always the way that it is now in his home, I suppose it was what he said, but just the importance of patience and waiting and playing the long game. And, again, my wife is right here. And, when we first got married, she wasn't saying Tikkun Klali every day, but she says Tikkun Klali every single day. And my daughter and I were walking, to a friend's house the other day. She said, tell me one of the stories of the Ohr Tzadikim. And these are things these are newer things. These are newer things, and being patient, I think, is so important, and recognizing that if you continue to show and in a sweet way, and you're not trying to tell anybody what it is, patience will win out. And the third thing, which is perhaps an appropriate way to end this thought, is, and this, I could say this from my own experience, mamish, a millionfold, and that is that it's so important to recognize that 90% of the time, the person who you're saying is not on board, or the person you think is not on board, they already are already. And Reish Pei Bet, how many times have I in my life been with people who, whether it's my immediate family or other people that I'm attempting to tell or to show, and you think, yeah, this is something that I have and they don't, but they're mamish living with it already in so many ways. How many times in my own marriage, has my wife showed me how much more connected she is to the Baal Shem Tov than I am, and to the teachings of it, even having not opened up a single sefer. Or in more recent years, some more Svarim, but over the years, how many times has it been that living with the awareness and the avoda b'mochen de gadlus, that's not coming from Svarim, but is coming from a place which is, as Reb Zusha said, the place where the Yerushalmi got it from, the place where we're all getting it from the Svarim. They're teaching it to our significant others. And if you look carefully, more often than not, you'll see that it's already happening. And if you see that it's happening, it'll happen even more.
Amen. 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 I'll just add also that we that in any relationship, whether it be a friendship or a friendship that develops into a romance, whether it's between significant others, or partners, or within our family or without, we aspire to love another person for who they are, to accept another person for who they are, and to bond with them, and to cultivate a sense of yichud, of oneness with them, of trust and connectivity with them, regardless and irrespective of their opinions, or who they vote for, where their religious practice might be, or what their connection is to said tzaddik or said ideology. I don't. My wife is not watching this for bringing. She's not right next to me, and she's behind me davening here in the shul of the Baal Shem Tov after 19 years of marriage and 20 years of knowing each other. Talk about a long game, double. But that wasn't the goal, and I don't know that that's a reasonable goal for many of us, or nor does it have to be. A person's thoughts and actions and choices and ideology and even spiritual state is a garment of who they are. It's an expression of who they are. And when two people, whether it be friends or lovers or teacher and student, or partners, are connected in a world of etzem, of unconditional acceptance and love, so then there's plenty of room for there to be different ways. If the tree of life is described as being at the center of the garden, paradise, the tree of life is at the center, meaning it's equidistant from every place and it's accessible from every entry point. One of the traditional blessing and greeting that's conferred one on the other during Yat Kislev, according to the liturgy of Chabad, is wish each other a good, sweet year. A new year in Limud HaChasidus, in the study of Chasidus, with a Darkei HaChasidus, and the pathways of Chasidus. I think this is an important chiluk, an important differentiation to make, specifically in this question, is that there's such a thing as Limud HaChasidus. It's the learning, it's the ideas, it's the theology, it's the understanding of the different perspectives and the different approaches of the different tzaddikim. And then there's the Darkei HaChasidus, there's the way of it, which was described so beautifully by everyone, by Rav Mo and by Gerzi and by Rav Davidel. The being with tzaddik, living with the tzaddik, whether it's the joy and the generosity of spirit that one experiences, the embrace, being in mezbahs or in the presence of the tzaddikim physically, or it's the shalom bayis and the warmth and the love that Rav Yeshua describes so beautifully, or like Rav David said, the being in it together without necessarily having the words or the language to describe and pinpoint that. When people are connected, they're connected, and we're drawing from each other, and we're sharing with one another, and it goes both ways. There's a channel. There's something that opens between us when our hearts are open, and we kind of sync up, and that which is on the laptop goes on the phone, and that which is on the phone goes to the laptop, and there's a sharing. Al kol pshayim techas ha'ava, meaning love is stronger than a lot of things. Light is stronger than darkness, and love is stronger than a difference of opinion. But if our goal is to cultivate a sense of yichud in our relationships, then I think that we also could daven for it. I think that we also could daven. I think that we could daven. We could daven and ask Hashem that whoever we're with and whatever the context may be, even if it's a corporate culture and we're trying to invest the Ohr Tzadikim in that corporate culture, whether it be with a supervisor or with a neighbor, or in any relationship, we can ask Hashem for anything. And that one way that we reveal the Ohr Tzadikim in our lives is by directly addressing the Ribono Shel Olam and asking the merit of that tzaddik to be with us, and to bring those who are with us along for the ride as well. What does the tzaddik look like? Just give us a tweet, 140 characters or less. Reb Davidel, what does the tzaddik look like?
You did it for me. How about that? That's the tzaddik. The tzaddik is helping you unmute yourself. What does the tzaddik look like? I'm not sure what you mean by that, but I'll answer it from where it lands in me. The original tzaddik is Adam Harishon. Adam Harishon was supposed to be Mashiach, as the Arizal pointed out. That Adam is Adam David Mashiach. Adam is the Rosh Tevos Adam David Mashiach, and in that sense, Adam was supposed to be Mashiach. How? Because Adam, the original tzaddik, was supposed to bring the whole world back to speaking to Hashem. And so I don't know what the tzaddik looks like in terms of how he dresses or how she dresses or how long their beard is or how long their payas are, what type of yarmulke they wear. But I could tell you that the tzaddik, presumably from the earliest sources that we have in the Torah, the tzaddik is a lashon of is Adam is Mashiach. Mashiach is lashon of Mesiach. The tzaddik is it's not so much what they look like as much as what you look like when you're by them, and that is that you're speaking more to Hashem. If you're speaking more to Hashem, you're probably in the presence of a tzaddik. I'll leave it at that.
Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Gerzi.
I could share, just going back to what I said before.
He's not on Twitter. He's not on Twitter. These guys don't know the rules. Rabbi Gerzi, I'm sorry, please.
Sorry, okay. I could share with what I was saying before. If you look at the sources, for me in my life, the tzaddik is somebody, tzaddik Yisod Olam, Yosef is honest, integrity, loyalty, reliability, commitment, independence, and reliance on Hashem, a lover, true lover, very authentic, real. All these words come up for me when I speak about the tzaddik, when I think about the tzaddik. And the imagery, it depends on the tzaddik. It depends where I am in my life, my ebb and my flow.
Beautiful. Shakoyach, thank you. Modche.
I'll answer that with a quick story. There was once Rav Nachman Tolchiner. He was Rabbi Nassan's main student. He never got to see Rabbi Nachman, and he just missed Rabbi Nachman. He was named after Rabbi Nachman. He always complained to Rabbi Nassan, "I can't believe I just missed Rabbi Nachman. I never got to see him. So Rabbi Nassan pointed out this boat driver that was going over the Bug River, and says, "You see that the boat driver?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Some guy, some normal, some captain." So he says, "He saw Rabbi Nachman." He goes, "Whoa, he saw Rabbi Nachman." He goes, "But he never saw Rabbi Nachman. You saw Rabbi Nachman." And the tzaddik is when you connect to those words, you saw him much more than seeing in the face and seeing in the. You saw him. You connected to him. Each person's going to connect to certain people. You're going to read their words, and you're like, and you're going to grab onto that, whoever it may be. Whoever it may be. There's a wide gamut of tzaddikim and mentors out there. That person that you want to grab every word and say, this applies to my life, and both makifin and bepnimius to take into your life. That's your tzaddik.
Thank you. I just want to share a beautiful comment that was posted over here by my friend Jonah Simcha. Jonah Simcha, wave hello. Jonah Simcha writes that the tzaddik looks like every yid combined, and all of the holy sparks collected into a unified flame. Tzaddik radiates the chelik elokam imal mamish that resides in the Jew that he or she is speaking with. And tzaddik is a mirror. A beautiful thought. I remember one of the number of years ago, standing on Pushkin on the morning of Rosh Hashanah. It was early in the morning, and one of my fellow Balei Tokeya was out early to go prepare. I think Dr. Epstein took a photo of it. It should be available for sale on Eichler's before Sukkot. But an old Jew from Yerushalmi Chassid, who said that his first time, he was telling me, he looked around and he goes, I said, what do you think about all these people? It's quite a motley crew. It's quite a motley crew on Rosh Hashanah and Uman. You have Sephardim and Ashkenazim, you have Jews from all walks of life. Micah is there, all sorts of chaver from all different places. He said, the first couple of years that he came to Rosh Hashanah, he came from like deep in Meisharim. He said it bothered him so much. He said, what are these chevra coming and making such a fuss and playing music and sitting, standing around all day drinking coffee and smoking cigarettes? What are they doing over here? What's their business? He said he just couldn't understand it. He said until he came to a very wise man, to a very big person, who kind of let him know that, like Jonah Simcha mentioned, whatever we see in others is kind of what we're imagining of ourselves. And if a person really wants to see the tzaddik, then our eyes and hearts have to be open to every person that we meet, to see the reflection of Hashem in every person, to know that everybody who's trying to draw close to the tzaddik, and trying to draw close to all the tzaddikim amitim, themselves make up a little bit of that tzaddik. And we're together one big mosaic. And he said, you look around, he said, all these people that I used to be so frustrated with was because I wasn't happy with myself. He said, now I understand that that each of these people, that everyone here makes up another aspect of the tzaddik's face. And only when we see everyone together are we able to really appreciate the koach of the tzaddik. Okay, there's so many good questions over here. I want to just, there was one here that that Tzvi posed regarding establishing a mentor, establishing a relationship with a spiritual mentor, with a tzaddik. It's not so simple to gain access to those who we might consider to be worthy mentors, or mentors, tzaddikim, righteous people that we'd like to draw close to, whether for men or for women. There are a lot of people who are vying for their attention, people who are living a lifestyle of spiritual growth and who are dynamic individuals, are busy with their own learning and their own avoda, and are busy with their close students and disciples. How is it possible for somebody to kind of develop that relationship? And is it necessary? I'll add to Tzvi's question, is that a correct assumption or presumption that that relationship with someone of that lofty stature is necessary and important to have? Is that something that every individual has to have? We introduced this evening with the words of the Baal HaTanya that every time we open up a Sefer Tanya, the Tanya was also written for very practical purposes. Baal HaTanya wasn't able to spend time with everybody who wanted to speak to him, and he wrote the Sefer Tanya in order to make himself and his thoughts accessible. Anybody enters the chamber of the Tanya is spending time with the Alter Rebbe. So I'd like to turn this over to Rav Mordechai, who has a Rebbe who's 200 years old, or maybe 200,000 years old. What do you think here? What are the chances that somebody's going to be able to cultivate a personal relationship with a tzaddik chai are pretty slim to none. What do you do?
Yeah, the friends on my screen are my mentors. So, you're pretty busy with Judah, but I think I get to catch you once in a while, and other people. Of course, I get to see 15 minutes before Shir, and even the Talmidim. Like how many interactions I've had, and you have the big tzaddik, like the big rudder, the rudder that you can't get near. There's a motor next to it, so you don't want to get near it. You can't get near it. Let's say maybe like a Moshe Weinberger type person. His rudder is very close to the motor, and it's hard to get in. But there's so many people affected by him, by Rabbi Nachman, and people who follow by Rav Kook, or in there, Rav Davidel's book, Sefer, that I have by my bed, sitting there almost every night, and that's for me. Rav Weinberger said this in Eretz Yisrael. He said, "Guys, Chevra, I'm out of here. I'm not your mentor. I can't do it. We're 6,000 miles away. We have different issues. Speak to each other." I basically, he was saying, I gave you guys what you need to know. Speak to each other now. And when a chevra comes together within the context of being mekabel, the light and direction of a bigger person than them, I think friends is the greatest way to help each other.
Thank you. Mordechai and I have been friends for 43 years, just putting it out there. Reb Davido.
Yes, a lot of overlap with what Reb Mordechai said. I also recently heard, I think many of us are mechubar to Rav Weinberger, and I also recently heard, I think this is maybe a framework to think of this in terms of somebody who recently was speaking to Rav Weinberger, and a person who has a very strong relationship. And afterwards, he was giving a shir, he was talking, and he said, sometimes I wonder when certain people call, and this is not to say that he wasn't totally there with the person, but sometimes, he says, sometimes I wonder if people have like friends. Sometimes we're looking to the tzaddik to be our friend, and sometimes we already have in the Torah a system where there's something called Sari Elef. There's like the opposite, like Rav Mo was saying, there's the people close to as Rav Mo gave his mashal. The Torah has this concept of there's a person who's the tzaddik for 1,000 people, for 100 people, for 10 people, and you have to obviously work within whatever circle that you're in, and to utilize that. And the other thing that I would say is 1,000,000%. I'm not saying any chidushim here, but there's just strength in really everything that Rav Mo just said. That the main thing for our generation appears to be, at least what I'm receiving from my teachers, is the inyan of having chaverim together, to be able to speak the words of the tzaddikim together, and in that way to bring them into our Dalet Amos. Of course, as much as a person can, without being a nudnik, to try to, or sometimes being a nudnik, there's different times for different things. Sometimes you have to just bug a tzaddik till you get in, because it's something that you're in need, but you also have to know when it's a time to speak to your friends, or to speak to other people who are not the Sari Elef, but who are the Sari Meya, or even less, in charge of less people, and to know where the malchus needs to be in that moment, and who to be connected to. I'll just to end with what Rav Mo was saying, being friends, to give kavod l'Torah to my younger brother Josh, who oftentimes points out, the Gemara says that someone who's holech yechidi balayla is one of the simanim of being a shota. Someone who's holech yechidi balayla. And so my younger brother always likes to say, Josh likes to say all the time, my older brother in many ways likes to always say that in the Laila, in the nighttime, as it's getting darker and darker before it becomes very, very bright, we can't be walking around yechidi. We're crazy if we think that we could do it alone. And the main way to be connected to the tzaddikim sometimes is to be connected to the tzaddikim together by learning the svarim together in a chabura, in a small chabura of friends. And that brings the tzaddik to you also in some cases.
Beautiful. Gerzi.
I have nothing to add, but I just want to make a public declaration that I'm listening to all of you, and I'm after the message that was just posted, I'm thinking, with all the shtuyot that I say, if I looked at my wife as a tzaddik, the tzaddikas, I looked at my children as a tzaddik, as a tzaddikas even more, my life would be very different. And I make a public declaration, a humble apology to my wife, and I'll tell them to my kids, and as well to you, because there's only one answer. There's only one say, yeah, we have the tzaddikim that we relate to, but it's mamash, as the message says, you and I, that's what is today, you and I. We have the tzaddikim, we have to do what we can to get through, but never to forget the you and I, the tzaddik.
Thank you. Reb David, I want to just, I appreciate what you said about knowing when to hold them and knowing when to fold them. Knowing when to be a nudnik and knowing when to, the main thing is to know that any person who's in the role of mashpia, who we're looking toward for their attention or their idea or their answer or their guidance, we have to give them the benefit of the doubt. You have to know that that their intentions are l'karev v'lo l'rachek, is to draw close and not to push away. But maybe they're busy, maybe they're preoccupied, and maybe they're saying no to you is saying yes to something else, to themselves, to their other obligations, their responsibilities. Or maybe on WhatsApp, you just drop WhatsApps. You see it and you say, I'll get to it later and miss it. In the chat here, Avi Noam reminded me that I shared once with Chevron many years ago that there was a time that I was chasing Rabbi Steinsaltz. I probably 6 or 7 Shabbos mornings in a row in the old city. I tried to catch him outside of the Tzemach Tzedek shul, or like stand behind him and walk him out and try to walk him back to his apartment. And he blew me off, like came out every single time. And even later, wrote him a letter and showed up at his office. And when I was at YU, and he was speaking in New York, showed up at the lecture. And he looked at me and he said to me, "Why are you bothering me? Read the books that I wrote. Like, what do you want from me?" And even later, I brought groups of guys to a Yat Kislev Fabrengen with Rabbi Steinsaltz in English in Yerushalayim one year. This is about 15 years ago. A bunch of guys from Rashid. He said, he looked at me. He gave me a little pat on the cheek, and he said, "You again." You have to know. A person has to know where we are going to access a personal relationship with an individual, and where they're kind of like, cutting us loose to pursue other avenues, and also to appreciate the fact that their writings and their shiurim online and their WhatsApp groups or whatever it is maybe is developing a kesher with them in a very deep way, and to be patient with ourselves and with them as well. Okay, we've gone for about an hour and a half here. Thank everybody for being here. I thank everybody for joining us. I thank Hananya and Zachariah for initiating this and for being the ones who were relentlessly hacking. I'm going to say it here straight away. It was years already. Not being mevater on this, for believing in the importance of a gathering like this, usually that we enjoy in Yerushalayim. And I bless us all that we be zocha to draw close to each other, to draw close to all the true tzaddikim amitim, and to be connected to the holiness of Eretz HaKodesh, and to meet together in Yerushalayim in good health. And I'm gonna just, everybody should feel comfortable. Shimi Borgen's here, so Shimi will remind us to make a bracha achrona if we need to at the end of the Fabrengen. We're gonna end with one more quick question for each of our panelists that 2 different people posed over here. What's a good sefer to learn as an entryway into learning Hasidus? I'm just going to get it out of the way. In the first place, living in the presence and the birth of the spoken word, and all of the collected writings of Rabbi Reuven Bashnak on Sfas Emes and Ishbitzer, I think, in the Arba Yisodos Pilsno, are all answers that are low-hanging fruit. I'd like to ask our panelists to make a recommendation or 2 each. There's the titles and names of books that if anybody wants to make their move here, they'll be able to have an action point here at the end of this beautiful Fabrengen. Reb Davidel.
I'll say 1 English and 1 Hebrew, because who knows, what people are looking for and what they need. Or maybe, yeah. An English sefer that maybe is a good place just in terms of some key terminology and written with such sweetness is Rav Reichman's sefer Flames of Faith, which is a wonderful entry point for anybody who hasn't read it already. Flames of Faith is a really great place to start. Or I'll add also, Rav Aryeh Kaplan's 2 svarim on an introduction to Chassidus, one of which is more historical, which I think is called the Chassidic Masters, and the other one which is more, goes through some of the Torahs in the original language translated into English. That is certainly a wonderful place to start. Another good place to start, which is maybe not where you would think, is kind of starting from the bottom up, is either starting from the Svarim of Rav Moshe Wolfson, Emunas Itecha, on Parsha. It's like very well grounded in the Parshas Shavua. It's an easy way also to get access to terminology in a way that's a little easier to swallow than jumping right into deeper svarim that have a lot of terminology that needs to be unpacked. And to listen to shirim also, that's another good way. But those are svarim. Those are good svarim to start with.
I want to give a shout out to Rabbi Reichman. Mo will remember this, and Rabbi Bashnak remember this. When we were in YU, and there was maybe 5 people in the entire campus of YU who had anything connected to something written from the Baal Shem Tov. I remember I was asked Rabbi Blau, the Mashgiach, because I thought that's what you do. You ask the Mashgiach what to do. I asked him a question on Torah Ohr, and he looked at it and he said, maybe you should find Zevi Reichman and ask him. He'll probably know. You had Mordechai and Michael Bash just in one corner over there. You had Bashnak on the other side over there, and a couple scattered weirdos around in the Tiferes Shlomo Shir from Rabbi Reichman. And you always had Reb Zev over there, the flame of faith himself. So we have to always give cover to Rabbi Reichman. Rabbi Gerzi, if somebody wants to come out of here tonight and order something on Amazon, Harvey's looking to order books. What should he order?
So thank you, Reb David Weinberg, for taking the books I was going to say. A nice sefer, an English sefer, is Mevasa Tov by the Biala Rebbe. The Biala Rebbe has got a couple of books in English, and they're very rich in content and they're worth a read.
Shkoyach. Rav Mordechai, Rabbi Kaplan.
I'm stumped on this one. There's been so much Gilgulim in my life. I just don't know anymore. Emunas Itecha, definitely, if you want just like that pump adrenaline that the whole world fits in. If you want to get into the world of Breslov, then obviously one is crossing an Arab bridge, very basic thought of Breslov. But if you want to get into the life of a Breslover, I'd go with a member of Judah used to carry around this all over YU, together with the big garbage bag of vodka and ice. What's the sefer called again? Through Fire and Water. Through Fire and Water is a if you want to just cut right down to like what it is, to be the hardcore Breslover and just not to unsweeten life, then Through Fire and Water is the way to go.
Thank you, Dad. Would you like to unmute to talk about how your tuition money went there, about the garbage bag situation? Thanks for that, Mordechai. Appreciate that. Appreciate that very much.
It was Purim.
Yeah, it was Purim. It was not on a regular Tuesday, except for that last semester. But let's not. I'm gonna push product over here. There's a wonderful adaptation of Sefer Oscha Vakesh by Rav Kluger called My Soul Desire. The essays on Hanukkah are particularly well written. It's worthwhile and it's a must-have. It's written in very down-to-earth language, and we're excited that in the coming months there's going to be another 2 volumes of My Soul Desire in English that are going to be published in honor of Isaac Rosen and Emily's wedding in Ritz Hashem. It's coming out 2 volumes. Be'ezrat Hashem, keep your eyes peeled for them. They'll be out soon. Yeah. Okay. Everyone, thank you. This was really, really great. Maybe let's unmute the Jewish people. Can we unmute ourselves before we check ourselves over here?
Chaim
Chaim.
Vracha.
Chaim.
Thank you.
Record. Davido, let's record.
Yeah,
let's do
thank
this.
you.
Let's get in the studio right now. I'm ready. I'll go right now. I'll go.
Hey, everybody. Ruby and Bobby.
They still on?
Those are the real winners.
They're still here.
Bobby.
Okay, l'chaim u'levrach, everyone. It should be a good, sweet new year of learning Chassidus, Darkei Chassidus, draws close to each other, and to the Ribono Shel Olam.
Amen.
Thank you.
Amen.
Everyone.
Ruby, stay on. There's a few things that we have to talk about. Please don't hang up there, Ruby.